Everyone. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How y'all doing? Already made it to Thursday.
We did. I know it's the long, short week after a holiday weekend, right?
Yeah, amazing. Did you do anything fun for Memorial Day weekend?
I did. It was the Newport Wine and Beer Festival.
Wow.
So that was fun. And the weather was great.
Oh, very fun.
I
Yeah.
spent the weekend in San Diego Harbor floating in a boat, so it'll be better.
I know. See, there's a theme going on here.
Yeah, I didn't have any water around me. I did go to Mexico City this weekend with a couple of friends, which was my favorite.
That's fun.
Nice.
Very cool. Yeah, so walkable, very lush, more so than I'd anticipated. And yeah, incredible food. I definitely recommend. If you haven't.
Yeah. They have, I'm not sure, it may not have been that type of trip, but they have some really cool museums as well.
Yes, yeah, we definitely did some cultural days for sure.
Yeah.
Anthropological Museum, the first day I thought was really incredible. A couple of more like contemporary art museums. No like out of city excursions, but there's a lot of good sightseeing in the city as well.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, now mole is climbing the ranks of my favorite food list very quickly.
Yeah, they have some good authentic mole there, that's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks everyone for joining today. I know people will still probably start trickling in. It looks like we're starting to get a little bit of a group here. So we can start with some of the intro to the session, setting sort of the purpose of what we're here for today. So first of all, introduce myself. I'm Patrick Reed. I'm a CSM here at Rockerbox, working with customers to figure out how to most effectively measure their marketing and make the best decisions for growing their business using our data. And I'm joined by Nicky and Josh from the Direct Avenue team, who are the experts in everything TV and CTV. I'm going to be asking to learn a lot about the more recent goings on in the space. And format-wise, we are going to sort of like follow the session through 3 news stories we're highlighting, 3 different questions we're used to, and then 3 trends that the team has noticed on the current TV and CTV landscape. And just for the attendees in the audience, just so you know, whenever there's a question that comes up, on the right-hand side of your screen, you should be able to see the bar to type in your message. And we can certainly address them as we go, but there will also be time at the end of the session to cover them, anything else that comes up. Yeah, any other questions or things you'd like to add, team, before we start? Or maybe we can just kick off in introductions.
Absolutely.
Sounds good.
So Nicky DeLaSalle, I'm Vice President of Growth with the agency. Loving the new world that we live in for CTV and linear and all the many changes that are happening. So excited to look at some of those changes with everyone today. We love questions, so feel free to ask away as we go through.
Josh Pico, Senior Vice President of Media for Direct Avenue. I've been very fortunate to experience a lot of these changes in my career. From the early days when this was brand new and this technology was just evolving and emerging to today, where we see the future and see kind of where the capabilities are going. So it's been a cool sort of experience for me to see it from inception into some maturity, and I can't imagine where it's going, but I have some ideas.
Awesome. Well, let's get started. We covered some of the Rockerbox and Direct Avenue context. Of course, Rockerbox measures marketing for companies to help them figure out what's really working through our platform and the data that we centralize for them. Direct Avenue, of course, plans, buys, and measures brand response media across all screens, linear and CTV, maintaining current customers and driving new customers for different businesses. Covered some of the intros. And then we can kick right off into 3 news stories, of which there are some really exciting ones to start with. So the first would be advertising hitting a record high with additional growth predicted for CTV. One of you want to take it away here?
Yeah, I think, a couple of the reasons why that we're seeing these record numbers. Certainly there's consumer shift. There's no doubt about it. It's been talked about for 7-8 years. The advanced targeting capabilities for a connected television, it offers just a robust ability to use both first-party, third-party targeting. measurement and analytics, right? This is an easy way for traditional marketers from the linear side to have a little bit more deterministic measurement and understand more about performance and ROI. I think a notable piece, at least for me, is cross-platform strategies, understanding that advertisers are wanting to adopt these strategies and understand how different devices and how exposure in different areas can holistically kind of increase frequency for consumers, right? As you're exposed on an 80-inch screen on the wall, and then you can serve ads on mobile devices or laptops as people are on the web or in-app on the web even. So cross-platform, I think, is a big piece to why so many marketers are adopting this technology and the strategy. Ad-supported models are growing, right? There's just a rise of capabilities. There's a rise of inventory. There's a rise of options for marketers to come into streaming and connected television. And really, this model is gaining popularity, expanding the reach, and it's bringing more consumers in, and it's just giving us as marketers more places to buy and participate. So I think the future predictions, the industry, analysts and people that are in this space, there's going to be continued growth, right? It's going to be really innovation, technology, measurement. These are the things that are attracting marketers today to really understand and be able to identify key areas that perform for them, or almost and more importantly, areas that don't.
Yeah, and just to add to Josh's comments as well there, really it's a reflection of the growing streaming subscriptions. So next year it's predicted that the streaming subscriptions will reach almost 72 billion. So it would be the obvious place for us to advertise, given that that's where we're going to find some consumers. And just reiterating Josh's point as well, it really is an easy addition or extension for digital natives. It's that very similar deterministic method of attribution. So definitely a natural line of sight of extension of advertising. One thing that I do want to note, however, is this really isn't a complete departure from traditional pay TV subscriptions. That is still very present. We're expecting to see about $62.5 billion in revenue from traditional linear subscriptions next year as well. So as we look at campaigns, I think it's also very important to look where that audience exists and align it accordingly.
Yeah, absolutely. I know, at least from the Rockerbox perspective, I've noticed with customers really excited as they're taking advantage of this growing CTV audience. That deterministic aspect that you both mentioned has become really important in helping to really quickly validate the role of that channel as they're just starting to test it out and see if it's going to work for their business. Cool. Well, moving on. The second would be Disney Plus and looking to launch always-on channels.
Yeah, so streaming platforms like Netflix, Amazon Prime, Disney Plus, they're incorporating more linear television features into their service. It's a hybrid approach, and really it's a blend of traditional television viewing habits with the on-demand sort of capability and flexibility of streaming. Consumer behaviors for the addition of linear TV, it caters to those viewers that are, they enjoy passive viewing experience for scheduled programming, right? Programming at certain times. But it also attracts an older demographic that's more accustomed to that style, right? Of showing up at a certain time to watch a program or piece of content. So these companies are starting to integrate more and more. I think there are some challenges here and some innovation that still needs to occur to really kind of make this, I'll say, future-proof. And that's something like the interface, the user interface of streaming platforms. They have to be able to accommodate this style. Things like electronic programming guides, I think, is really important for people to have easy access to live channels and be able to look at a grid in a traditional sort of TV guide sense and know what programming is coming up and when. And this is all alongside on-demand content. So as they are in these platforms and have the ability to search shows or look at particular programming, there's also the ability to look at a TV guide and see what's coming up next on some of these linear pastures. I think the future projections for this category, there's a distinct line between traditional TV and streaming, but that's going to continue to blur. It's going to start to morph a little bit more in time. We may see more innovation, how content is delivered, how it's consumed. The success of linear TV on streaming platforms can definitely influence evolution of the whole landscape. So we'll see where it goes. We have some ideas, but there's a lot that needs to be done still in order to make that consumer experience really easy and give both sides, both linear TV traditional viewers, the older demographics, and the younger generation, one place to sort of be all encompassing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and totally agree with Josh on that. It's undoubtedly going to narrow the gap with some of the growing older audiences into this kind of more digital environment. That's definitely going to be a benefit, but there's going to be a learning curve from the publisher side as well as from the audience side in the process. But with really increasing subscription costs to all of the publishers, I think that this is also a demand from consumers. They feel that they want to be served more relevant and interesting content that really speaks to their interests.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting, the point you mentioned about sort of bringing in maybe like a different audience, as this CTV at one point was sort of this more frontier technology that was bringing more tech savvy people into watching, now bringing sort of the traditional like linear TV audience onto there as well, and now making it sort of like a hybrid place for everyone to watch. I think it's really interesting, especially for sort of like audience dynamics as you're thinking about it from an advertising perspective. We do have a question from Lars in the chat who's asking about how we think about ROAS for linear versus non-linear channels, how we end up going about this. I know I have some thoughts about it. I'll let y'all cover it first in case anything comes to mind.
Sure, I'll take that and you can add to it. Linear for ROAS is interesting because most of these campaigns these days are online conversions, online revenue tied to offline media. So they're all modeled. And when marketers have to model out performance, we're really only taking strongest signals. So we're not capturing the entire sales funnel. We're not capturing every dollar that is being generated by our efforts. We're only trying to read the strongest signal next to an airing to understand how to optimize and how to grow. So I think it's beholden to the advertisers themselves to really keep a keen eye on holistic numbers to understand the true value of linear versus CTV in terms of ROAS. On the connected television side, you have multi-touch, right? There's a lot of different elements that are at play there. And most of these are last touch attribution. So you may have to deduplicate revenue on if you're an advertiser looking at performance from linear CTV. There's multiple devices out there, right? Facebook might be taking credit for the same thing that a streaming platform is taking credit for. And it's really up to companies like Rockerbox, very helpful in this category. But also I encourage marketers themselves and advertisers to look at their bottom line. We're only measuring strongest signals to know how to buy better. That doesn't mean we're measuring the entirety of the revenue being generated.
Yeah, I think you nailed it, Josh. And of course, third one for Rockerbox, I think like what we do really well is stitching that customer journey together. That helps put the touch points on a linear or CTV in context with all the other marketing that a company might be doing. Like you said, if we have these channels working at different parts in the funnel, I think a lot of customers have taken this as sort of one piece of what ends up being put together as a holistic view and understanding of how their customers are making their way to making purchases on the website, and also adjusting how they're thinking about and setting their expectations for ROAS based on how they can notice with Rockerbox where these channels are actually operating in their funnel. Maybe the CTV is working closer at the bottom, it's going to be a little more of like a direct response expectation for ROAS. Whereas maybe linear, they're saying like this is a discovery touch point that's sort of like filling that top of funnel. Maybe this is something that, you know, in our internal reporting, we're not drilling in so hard on like what is the ROAS on this, because we have sort of a more wide-ranging understanding of what role this is playing for us in growing our business sort of on a high level. Cool. We can move into our third and final headline, which would be Netflix and Prime Video participating in TV Week.
This is for me, I think this is about content showcase, right? TV Week provides a platform for these companies to showcase upcoming content, including series, new films, releases, exclusives. It helps generate buzz and anticipation for these brands among industry professionals and viewers. So participating in TV Week just sort of elevates these companies to bring them into the main stage of what has traditionally been, you know, a couple big broadcast networks and some tier one cables. It's about marketing and promotion, right? This is it's a valuable opportunity for Netflix and Prime Video to engage in all these things. They can leverage the events to reach a wider audience and drive subscriptions even by this credibility being with TV Week. I think that's something that is, you know, everybody's always selling, everybody's always marketing their efforts and what they do. So for me, this is another element of these companies just kind of maturing over time. I think future prospects here, their involvement, this signals a commitment to evolving with the industry and sort of leading the charge at times. As the lines between the traditional television and streaming blur, like I mentioned prior, these companies are positioning themselves really for sustained growth and to be influential.
Yeah, and I think that there's a range of CPMs across all of the various publishers for CTV. And some of them are more appealing to the performance side. Some of them are better served to the brand side of things. And I would put Netflix within that, you know, potentially higher CPMs, better served currently to the brand side. So for me, it aligns with the fact that they're in the upfronts and wanting to be in, you know, participate in TV Week. The part that you mentioned as well, Josh, about Prime Video and Netflix being in the upfronts, it really demonstrates how mainstream streaming has become. Certainly from the consumer's eyes, you know, again, they're watching the same programming on the same TV in their living room, regardless of whether it's linear or CTV. So it's a reflection of that mainstream function.
No questions there. Let's dive now that we've covered some of the. Oh, we have a question. Laura has no idea what TV Week is. Maybe we missed the context that can be described.
Nicky, you'd like to describe what that is?
Sure. So basically, we're talking about the upfronts.
Okay, let's move into trends. First being OTT and streaming subscription revenues topping legacy pay TV in 2025.
Consumer behavior is a big deal here. This trend reflects the change of our habits as consumers, right? With more people just opting in for flexibility. They want the convenience of streaming services. They offer on-demand content and personalized viewing experiences. I think that's a big key. Part of the personalization is relevancy, right? Getting ads that actually make sense for you, as opposed to getting, you know, I remember being younger, watching linear TV and just being exposed to all these ads that I didn't really understand. I didn't really know why I was watching them on a Saturday morning cartoon. But now as an older marketer, I do get it. It's kind of a spray and pray methodology with linear, but that doesn't really take the shape here in CTV. This is more personalized, and ads become more relevant to me as I am maybe visiting web pages. My behavior online drives a lot of where the ads that I see it, and it's kind of cool to see that play out in real life. One example, actually, I was shopping for some tires for my car a couple months ago, And I started being served more ads on CTV for companies like Bridgestone. I remember specifically, and I don't know if they were using my data, if they were really using keyword searches or any type of behavioral data, but it was pretty relevant for me in terms of when I was at work working on my research and go home and see an ad that same evening. It's pretty interesting how that works. The global reach for the streaming subscriptions and the accessibility of OTT platforms allows international markets, right? Expanding subscribers beyond the limitations of regional pay TV. So these companies, you have to remember, they're global in reach. So it just is a massive expansion for these brands to engage as they are selling across different countries. Technological advancements, these improvements in internet infrastructure and the proliferation of smart devices, this has made streaming services more accessible, more user-friendly, and really it's further driving adoption. Watching when you want, where you want, and how you want on all these different devices. These are all capabilities. And lastly, I think, is the content and production acquisition. So streaming platforms have heavily invested in content. They are producing programs left and right, and this is attracting and retaining subscribers, right? High developed quality programming, exclusive rights to popular content, things like that. So I think one notable piece is that NFL for the Christmas Day game is being brought to streaming, right? That's something that is a nod to what we're talking about as adoption and innovation occur. Their carriage agreements and all of these things in the future are kind of up for debate, and we'll see where it plays out in the long run.
Yeah, and I think just to add to that, along with it becoming mainstream and access to content that was previously, solely on linear television, through streaming, we're able to really get to some very nuanced audiences within campaign allowables for each individual client. So it provides many opportunities for us to continue that journey with the client. And particularly, as Josh mentioned, his experience with Bridgestone tires, we're able to retarget that consumer many times. And obviously that's not just from CTV, but also from other sources as well, whether that's linear television, search, direct mail, first party data. We can interact with that consumer through CTV.
Great. We do have a question from Craig as well, somewhat related to that last point there, which is, speaking of data and targeting, what are you seeing as the best approach to buying media across the CTV ecosystem to drive scale?
Yeah, I think the most underutilized piece of data is first party. So the best approach that we've realized is taking CRM data, take your customers' actual revenue generating events, take those people and use them for seed audiences, use them as a seed for lookalikes, use them to remarket or to resubscribe. I know a lot of these brands have subscription models, right? So as people churn in for a month or two or three and churn out, you can remarket to them by using first party data. It's difficult in our world to try to identify the exact consumer that our brands and our advertisers are looking for when we just use sort of like labels of third-party data systems, right? You may see different attributes or behaviors of people, and you don't really know anything more about them. So the first-party data really gets rid of some of that mystery of who am I really reaching when I'm going after a pet owner that drives an electric vehicle, right? As an example. There's a lot of people in that group and they're not all the same, but your highest converters from your CRM system is definitely going to lead you down the path of at least speaking to lookalikes and similar people that have different affinities, but may have the propensity to convert and drive revenue.
yeah, there's really nothing better than saying, go find me more people like this who I know
Yeah, exactly.
as customers. Yeah. Great. We can move on to streaming viewers now, up to 80% US adults, over 200 million people. Seems like everyone is streaming everything now, including parents, which, Josh, I think that my mom would probably really appreciate that TV God-like feature that you were mentioning.
Yeah, my father as well. Yeah.
And I think what's surprising is not just the number of people, the amount of time that they're viewing as well. So the average US adult views over 2 hours a day just of streaming content. So they're spending a lot of time with the medium. This isn't something that they're just dipping into. So certainly a good place for us to advertise. And then in terms of who that is, you're right, it's pretty much everyone. It's 80% of 25 to 54-year-olds, but also now 50% of people that are over 65 as well. So it's a very sizable audience.
I think that has a lot to do with accessibility. Like I said before, what you want, when you want, where you want it, right? And how. Those items make everything so easy for consumers to come to this space. And I think it's natural. You look at this on-demand nature of social media apps like TikTok and Instagram and all these things. It's just boom, boom, boom. And that's sort of a culture that's developing and growing, I think. And CTV just feeds right into it because it's very similar in nature. Original content, like I said before, the production of shows it's played a crucial role. Look at some of these viral sort of shows, programming like Stranger Things or The Mandalorian. They've become cultural phenomena, and that's the production quality. That's the content that we're looking for, and that's what people are attracted to. The impact on traditional media from this is, there's a dominance of streaming reshaping our landscape, and it's affecting advertising strategies. Certainly, Nikki, you and I have daily conversations about this. The content production, the business models of traditional companies, everything is changing. And so that presents challenges for us as marketers, and we have to be able to understand the wants and needs of our brand and align the best strategies for them.
Awesome. And Gabriel just asked if a recording of this call will be made available. Yeah, for the audience listening, we will be sharing a recording following the conclusion of this meeting as well, just for reference. Great. I think next question will be about CTV ad frequency. I'm certainly interested in learning a little more about this. Soaring 80% in 2 years. Yeah, Josh, Nikki, do you have any thoughts here?
Yeah, expanding viewership, right? So this is a surge in ad frequency. It's driven by more audiences, more people come into it, right? You have more content, you have more platforms that just drives demand. With more consumers cutting the cord and shifting to streaming, we've heard this for 6-7 years, it seems, and this is still happening today, and it's providing marketers like us with a larger and it's more engaged viewer base. We used to talk about fragmentation, and don't get me wrong, fragmentation is a real thing. But when we think about the engagement and the number of options, we want to be able to speak to people in the place and time of their choosing. And this is what that does. So I think the targeting, the capabilities here for our advanced reaching of the right people, it allows us to deliver personalized ads. It allows us to be more relevant to them, to my point earlier with the tires. Audience segmentation, having different creative for different types of audiences that you want to go after, increasing the relevance and impact of those campaigns and justifying higher ad frequency. These are things that we're seeing happening every day. And for those that are in the programmatic space, the ability to control for ad frequency is paramount, because I don't know how many folks listening today have seen the example where you're watching a program or show and you may see the same ad 6 or 7 times. It's no joke, it happens. And that's a poor consumer experience, right? That's a turnoff, at least for me. I kind of shut down after a certain amount of frequency. So frequency is going up, and there's a lot of brands that are just going after reach. They're just going after the masses and the tonnage. But I think there's there's more controls that need to be put in place, especially when you talk about cross-platform and controlling holistic frequency, so that you don't become that, you don't want to damage your brand, right? You don't want to be that brand that is just loading up so many dollars, going after every impression they can grab. It really doesn't give the credibility that I think consumers look for. A few touch points, all right, I got the message, I get it, right? I think that's what we're trying to get to. And lastly, what I'll say about ad frequency is the ROI and the effectiveness. So brands are seeing so much more return on what they're investing in CTV, largely because of measurement, but it is a performing campaign strategy. It is a performing vertical, and this leads brands to allocate more budget. And to my point earlier, tonnage, frequency, all those things are very paramount and have to be kept in mind when placing ads.
I think you make a great point there, Josh, about sort of that feeling of being bombarded. I think everyone can kind of relate to that. I know I've certainly seen a commercial that I thought, oh, I don't want to see that one again. And then I keep seeing it. I'm thinking like, okay, if I wasn't sure already, I'm definitely not going to be becoming a customer here. But to your point about that sort of, maybe brands going a little too far and trying to just sort of like eat up reach and frequency. When you're advertising to people in these, essentially these sort of like enclaves of content that they're consuming, it is a pretty intimate, like personal space too. So it's great to see an ad, like you said, maybe a couple touch points of something that's highly relevant to you. But if you're feeling like you're in a place where you're watching content that you like, and there's these ads that are sort of hitting really frequently, they're saying like sort of interrupting that experience, it can really quickly turn it from like, hey, here's a great way to connect, to one that's sort of potentially alienating for that customer. So
that's right.
Yeah,
that's right. And for us performance marketers, Patrick, if you serve a certain amount of frequency to a household or to even a single device, and you haven't got the conversion you wanted, you're probably not going to get it. Move on. Stop wasting dollars, right?
Yeah, so. Absolutely. And I think, as far as Rockerbox is concerned with tracking some of these things, some of our most successful customers have had a lot of success using our what's called our like marketing paths, or like user journey view, that helps them sort of validate orders where there may be sort of like repeated occurrences of the same or really similar content that they're running, sort of like trying to convince a customer to go to the site and make a purchase. And they've been able to sort of like optimize across different channels, not just for CTV, but how they're running another prospecting or sort of like conversion tactic channel, to make sure that they're sort of right sizing that cadence of how they're interacting with that customer and not hitting them with the same one more than they need to. Great, that's CTV ad frequency. Now we can hop into some of the questions. First being, why do we think CTV is seeing such growth? I know it seems like everyone's really watching it, but what are some of the broader trends maybe that, if you're unfamiliar with the industry, that y'all have been seeing?
Yeah, I feel like we could spend just an hour just on this question.
Yeah.
So the FAST channels have definitely played a role. The FAST channels are the free ad-supported platforms, and examples would be a Freevee or a Tubo or a Pluto. They've definitely gained a lot of traction, and the benefits of them are that they offer lower ad rates. There's these, with all CTV, there's clearer performance metric, and also now potential for interactive ads as well. One of the big highlights of these, again, is back to these unique audiences. So an example would be 32% of Freevee users don't use Netflix. With that, they also look for more healthcare research online. They're looking for more financial advice tools. So our access to some of these nuanced audiences is really beneficial. AI is the obvious one. That's been a commonplace for CTV for a long time, but it continues to contribute to an improved customer experience, definitely more discoverability as well. We're all looking for, as we've said, this more personalized content, and that's really allowing us to do that. It's allowing us to reach that customer and also have a happy customer because they're seeing what they want to see for the most part. Privacy compliance is another aspect on this. And what CTV has done really well is adopted consent management platforms. They're very beneficial to both the consumer and also the advertiser as well. So what they do is they provide a proactive approach to privacy. It allows the users to provide consent and have control over their data, and also allows brands and advertisers to utilize tools to deliver that personal content to them, but within that safe data integrity environment. And then just final thought from me on this is segmentation. Segmentation, try and say that 10 times fast, has redefined audience targeting. So, we've got a situation right now of rising living costs. People are making more thoughtful purchases. So advertisers have to prioritize segmentation. They have to think about some better product matching based on audience behaviors and also the preferences as well.
Some of the notables from my point of view and my experience is that CTV is seeing a lot of growth because of the entry point, right? I think there's a lower point of entry in terms of investment or budget allocation required to test into CTV and to get a good read, to get a good understanding and really statistical significance versus linear TV where ultimately it requires more budget. So that's one element. Another is that the price in general for connected television has right-sized. Early on, as the shiny new penny develops, pricing is premium and things are expensive. But over time, it normalizes, and that's what we're seeing today. CTV platforms, in terms of personalization of content, they use sophisticated algorithms. They make it a better consumer experience based on what you watch, your history, your preferences. They'll make recommendations for other programming. So there's a lot of reasons why there's growth, both from a consumer demand perspective and then from a marketing perspective and investments. Content diversity, I think connected TV plays a wide range in content, movies, TV, even live sports. We'll see more and more of that in the future. In addition to that is news and niche programming. So it's a variety that appeals to a diverse audience segment and keeps viewers engaged. So to your point, Nikki, we can go on and on about this topic. Right? There's measurable outcomes, advanced targeting, the rise of services, and just the capability for people to access this media is only growing. So I think for the sake of time, that is probably all I'll say about that.
You guys crushed it. Bonnie did have a question, actually, speaking of some of these trends. So the question is, being that more affluent customers buy the premium no ad subscriptions, which CTV platform do you see as the best for buyers with discretionary income?
So brands that are targeting a more affluent customer, we don't really care where they're watching. That's one thing, Bonnie, that I think I want to drive home is that the audience is our target, not necessarily the platform or the publisher. These people, we want to follow them around in their lives and be there for them when they engage in content, whether that's premium paid or free ad supported. It doesn't matter to us, right? So we want to make sure that we identify the affluent customer and serve ads to them when they are engaging. So to specifically answer your question, for some discretionary income, who has additional spending money, I think is what that's about. So buyers with extra income tend to be affluent, and sure, they're going to have premium paid subscriptions, but you can't alienate them from the free streaming services that are, oftentimes embedded in these smart TVs when they purchase them. These are apps that are preloaded. And when somebody purchases these devices, they may be using those systems. And so I think it's important that we don't focus so much on publishers based on composition and the type of audience they attract. We focus more on the audience themselves and just serve ads wherever they may be. We could spend hours talking about why CTV is so great. Maybe we need to
to change gears a little bit and think, where does linear TV now sit in all of this? And I think for a long time, it's been sort of like live sports, live entertainment has been something that's keeping it up. But yeah, how do y'all see its role changing as we see everything sort of start to bundle into CTV OTT?
Mass market exposure, right? Think about the way that linear TV has always been. I mean, we're talking about live events. Linear TV is the go-to medium for sports, award shows, news, any of that live type content. This is still drawing large engaged audiences. It provides prime opportunities for advertisers. So linear TV has prestige and trust, right? It's been around a long time. It carries a bit of brand credibility when you're on television. Consumers often view TV as a more credible source compared to online or other digital ads, which have in the past been plagued by fraud and just sort of this distrust for those that know. Linear TV garners really stable audiences. Certain programming on linear TV, like I said before, news or long-running shows. Think of Judge Judy or Wheel of Fortune and these types of programs. They maintain a stable, loyal audience. Viewers are coming back to this stuff day after day after day, and making it a reliable platform and a reliable source for marketers like us to target audiences. The traditional metrics that linear TV provides, an established, well understood metric for measuring an ad performance. We've been doing this a long time, and today with so many people converting online, brands and performance marketers like us, we're all living in a world of modeled results. All models are wrong. Some are helpful, right? We're just looking for direction. We're looking for signal. And linear TV is great because it provides tonnage for every airing. The mass amount of impressions you get from a single ad gives you a little bit more confidence when you start to look at statistical analysis versus CTV, which is a single impression at a time. And you've got to really buy a lot of impressions to start to garner enough data to learn. You get that data faster in linear TV, and that's appealing to advertisers accustomed to these types of standards. So I think lastly is the metrics for in terms of like reach and frequency and GRPs, right? This is still a relevant media math conversation today because linear TV has transacted on these things for so long. And it really is unique to linear television to understand how many people you're getting, how many times you're hitting them. That's much harder to duplicate in the world of cross-device when you bring CTV and digital into linear. So as a standalone, it's much easier to sort of measure out those rating points and understand your reach from linear television.
Yeah, I think we have to be a little bit careful not to consider consumers' decision to either have linear TV or CTV. Very few consumers live in that silo. Most are watching many forms of, or interacting with many forms of mediums. So certainly if you look at who's watching linear TV right now, over 50% of people that are age 65 or older still have cable subscriptions. Additionally, if you look at annual income of cable TV households, it's 11% higher than non-subscribers. So again, it's taking that audience first approach and saying, how do I want to target my consumer? Where do they live? Certainly from a branding and a performance perspective, as Josh said, it plays a really vital role. So 31% of consumers say they find brands through TV ads, and that's compared to 17% who find them through pre-roll. So having that greater mass exposure is really a huge benefit to campaigns. As we bleed that through as well to CTV, what's super interesting is linear content still represents 85% of CTV inventory. So again, we have that overlap and we have these merging worlds. I think when we look at any campaign, it has to be this audience-driven approach to align and just understand that we're all completely looking at so many different mediums at the same time, and we have to be forever present in front of that consumer.
Awesome. Let's go to the final piece here of our questions as we're starting to approach towards the end of our time here in the hour. What are some best practices for CTV and TV advertising and measurement in 2024, knowing that our consumers are watching both linear and CTV, they're sort of everywhere all at once, and often watching all the same content? What are some of the best practices as an advertiser trying to get into this space?
Yeah, I think, Nicky, you just said it, audience first approach. And for brands, I think that is leveraging first party data. You got to identify and target specific segments based on who is a customer. And not all customers are equal. You have, high value customers. You have customers that are sticky in terms of a subscription model, and they don't churn out, they stay with you. So leveraging that data. And like I said in the beginning, the first party CRM data, for example, to include an audience or to exclude an audience that you don't want to market to because you already have them in your funnel, create lookalike models from that data, things like that. Integrating CTV and television campaigns with broader digital marketing strategies is also going to get your message across all channels. So using television and CTV as part of a multi-channel approach, it complements social media, complements online video and display banners. Monitor ad frequency. Some of the best practices is what we were talking about. Don't overexpose, avoid ad fatigue, use frequency capping, and really control the consumer experience. Think about yourself in front of a television and how you perceive brands as they do or don't do these practices. I think that's important too. We think so much about ROI and performance and CAC, and we don't really think about consumers. But so many brands that even some that I've worked on, they want to push and leverage so hard that it really becomes a turnoff. And in some cases to the point where consumers start to call networks and they start to call people and complain. So it is really a thing that I want to drive home and try to put yourself in the position of the consumer, hitting them the right amount of frequency, when they want, where they want to be hit. And if they're not converting for you, go on to the next one.
Yeah, I think, absolutely perfect and spot on everything that Josh said. I think for me, the other part when I'm putting together with Josh strategies for clients is to really do a little bit more in-depth research and not just be kind of a sheep in the process. And what I mean by that is don't just follow all of your competitors in terms of where they're spending, kind of dig a little deeper. We found this recently with a client in terms of the projected spend by month. If we looked at competitive, there was a huge haul of data when this was a car accident client. We found the biggest number of car accidents, people weren't spending, and it was such a huge opportunity for this particular client. So I think really getting behind the consumer and the data behind it, not just following what every other competitor does, is a huge part of that. That also leads into this first party data, and as we look at this from a CTV perspective as well.
Yeah, I think the last thing I'd add in there too is having, if possible, that third-party verification of data as well, which really just means having another lens to look at the performance that you're seeing in platform on whatever you're running as well. Just as much measurement and additional points of view that you can use to sort of piece these things together to find these insights, I think is really helpful. And certainly sort of how we think about Rockerbox coming into is sort of another third party that can give you a new view of how your spend is working.
Absolutely. That factor of last touch model, all systems taking credit for something, becomes really challenging when you don't have a company like Rockerbox to help you sort through all of the different impressions being served, because they're all siloed, right? These systems don't generally talk to each other. So the ability to load in TV logs and to load in CTV impressions and to see your banner display impressions and to put them all into one system and sort of look at this measurement more holistically, as opposed to these silos taking credit and having a ton of duplication, really is beneficial.
Great. We have reached the end of what we've prepared for this hour. we have answered a few of the questions that we've gone through in the chat, but yeah, I want to open the floor as we still have 10 minutes or so for any questions that the audience have. And Suzanne just shared one, which is any trends about the specifics of CTV metrics. Suzanne, could you maybe clarify, maybe like if curious in seeing like what kind of read on CPMs we're seeing or sort of engagement rates, things like that? What type of metrics are the clients more interested in, who you're working with? Yeah, what are the priorities they're looking for? Maybe.
Yeah, good. So from our perspective, and Patrick, you're probably the best suited to answer this question, but what we see in terms of metrics is it's not so much view completion. That used to be a thing, but because we're serving a lot of our ads and CTV on 80-inch devices that are non-interactive, we have very high view through completion rates. So that's not a thing necessarily. CPM is kind of subsidiary, it's not the primary. We look at performance in terms of cost per visit. That gives us a signal. Is the lights on? Is there anybody home? Right. Then we start to look at generally speaking, pixels and tags on websites and looking at volumes. We want to see, are we seeing an increase in volume from our efforts in CTV marketing? And that's a direct correlation to cost per visit. And those volumes that we're looking at, we're mapping different portions of a conversion funnel. So are people filling out forms? Are they looking at product pages? Are they reading blogs? Are they actually converting into sales and revenue? That's the ultimate end all be all for performance marketers. But some brands and strategies in certain categories are a little bit more interested in understanding what portions of their websites are attracting more and more volume. And how can they use those portions of their websites to create additional content, to create additional conversions. We see a lot of testimonials on websites that are being reviewed. And I think that's akin to consumers doing research, right? You're exposing ads to them in CTV. So understanding where on a website they're visiting and how much time they're spending and what actions they're taking are really important to understand the consumer journey and really how they are considering that conversion. Ultimately, revenue, return on ad spend tends to be the number one measurement because not all acquisitions are equal, especially if you're selling multiple products or you have thousands of SKUs. So cost per order doesn't really do the job there. So return on ad spend is for us in performance marketing, the end all be all. But knowing that consumer journey and where people are visiting sites and where they are consuming information about the brand is very, very important.
Yeah, and I think the only thing I'd add to that would be additionally just using Rockerbox to identify maybe like what other channels or market touch points that are happening in addition to the CTV or linear TV touch points people have. So seeing if there's any sort of overlap or common sort of coincidences of touch points. And then, like Josh mentioned, ROAS is still the end all be all and what really everyone's looking at. But I think when you do have some of that context of like what role is this channel playing in our funnel, like especially if it's a more top of funnel position it's playing, there's also the option within Rockerbox to look at a conversion event that would be considered more like top of funnel rather than like a final purchase. Maybe you want to look at how we're attributing the CTV touch points to like adding to cart, reviewing products and things like that, which is still a helpful insight as an advertiser. Great. Well, I don't see any other questions in the chat. Like I said, we're going to be able to send out this recording to the audience after this session is over, but I think we're nearing the end of our time here. I want to thank Josh and Nicky for sharing their sage advice as always, as we want to do every few quarters here with Rockerbox, and thank you for sharing so much of your expertise with our audience.
Yeah, thanks, Patrick. Good to see you again, man. Thank you.
Yeah, great to see you. Thanks, everyone.